requirements for being a minister, being an elder, being an overseer. You want to have a leadership role in the church. You feel that you're called to be a minister. You feel that you're called to be a prophet, a prophetess. You feel like you're called to be a teacher or a preacher or an apostle. You feel like you're called to do all of that. Listen, I got the requirements for you right here. You want to know what you need to do, how you need to be? I got you. Got it right here. And good news. It's straight from the word. So I'm going to go ahead and read this nice little passage. I'm reading the King James Version because this version just keeps it so simple and gets right to the point. It's not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to tell you the real, tell you the truth. So it says, 1 Timothy chapter 3. That is where we will be reading from. 1 Timothy chapter 3, first verse through the 13th verse. So this is what it says. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. A bishop then must be blameless. Now, bishop, overseer, that's the terminology a little different. Basically, a leader in the church, an overseer of the church. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker, not greedy or filthy lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride he fall into condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must have a good report of them which are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Likewise, must the deacons be grave. Deacons or servants, same thing. Likewise, must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy lucre, holding the mystery of the faith in a pure conscience. And let these also first be proved, then let them use the office of a deacon, being found blameless. There's that word again. We're reading from 1 Timothy chapter 3. And I'm on the 11th verse now. Even so must their wives be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Let the deacons be the husbands of one wife, ruling their children and of their own houses well. For they that have used the office of a deacon well purchase to themselves a good degree, and great boldness in the faith which is in Christ Jesus. So, that's a lot, And that's out the King James Version. So it's easy to get a little tripped up in the wording, but I'm going to break all that down for you. So, starting at the first verse, 1 Timothy chapter 3, it says, this is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. So, you want to be a leader in the church. You want to have a leadership role in the church, whether that's teacher or preacher or pastor or apostle or prophet or evangelist, or you want to be over the children's ministry, whatever you want to do in the ministry, whatever you want to do in the church, talking to you. You want to be a leader, you want to be an elder, you feel that you're called to preach, good. The Bible says that he desires a good work. It's a good thing that you desire these things. It's a good thing that you want to serve in God's house. It's a good thing that you're answering the call. When you come to the place where you accept the desire to do God's work, it is good. It is good to desire these offices and roles, but understand what you are asking for. Okay? Some people just want to be pastors because they think it looks nice. Some people just want to be pastors and preachers because they want high positions. But there's requirements that go with it. Okay, not everybody can have a leadership role in the church. Some people just aren't ready. Some people just can't handle it. But we're going to go through. Don't worry. I got you. Don't worry. We're going to go through. This is a true saying. If a man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work. Good on you. Good on you that you want to have a leadership role in the church. Praise God for it. You feel that you've called. You know you've been called. He's been telling you that you're called your entire life. And now you're at the place where you can say, you know what, Lord? You was right. I am called. You did call me. I'm ready to go forward in what you've called me to do. That's a good thing. That's how he starts. The next thing he says, verse number 2, 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 2. A bishop then must be blameless. Right off the gate? Right out the gate. Well, first of all, let's deal with that must be. Okay? These are the requirements of an overseer, a bishop, any leadership role in the church. These are the requirements. Mistakes are understandable and expected. Okay? But continued behavior is not. It's okay to be tripped up, but I should not continually see you on the ground. Okay? You become a minister, you become a preacher, you become a pastor, you get tripped up, you fall into some things, you fall into some sin. Understandable. God forgives. There's grace available to you, but I should not continually see you on the ground. I should not continually see you getting tripped up by the same thing over and over and over again, because now it's becoming a habit. Now it's becoming a choice. Again, even in that, there's still forgiveness for you. But if you want to go into a leadership role in the church, you want to be a preacher, you want to be a pastor, you have to understand that you're going to be looked at much harder. Understand what you're asking for, people. Understand what you're asking for. Again, this isn't for everybody. Not everybody's called to have a leadership role in the church. Not everyone's called to be an overseer in the church. Okay? Not everybody's called to be a pastor. Not everybody's called to be on the pulpit. Not everybody's called to be on a stage. But for those that are, and this is what you want to be, and if you already are on that platform, understand what weight is on you. Okay? It's okay for you to make mistakes, but it should not be continued behavior. It should not be continued behavior. As a pastor, I should not continuously hear about you cheating on your wife. Shouldn't hear. Shouldn't do it. As a minister of the gospel, I should not continuously hear about you engaging in homosexual activity. Shouldn't do it. Shouldn't hear it. Should not be happening. Shouldn't. Especially not as a leader in the church. Okay. It said, blameless. This does not mean that mistakes can't be made. Okay. This does not mean that mistakes can't be made. There shouldn't be anything about your walk that people can take hold of and attack the church. Mistakes made prior to salvation are included. So when it says blameless, okay, it's not saying that you got to be perfect. We know, we understand that nobody is perfect. You are human. We understand that things happen and people make mistakes. That's not what it's saying. But it's saying, as a minister of the gospel, you should be blameless. Meaning there shouldn't be something that someone can continually throw at you. There shouldn't be something that someone can continually throw at you and attack the church with the fact that you're a leader and that you're still doing this. So prior to you becoming a leader in the church, take care of these things. Take care of these sins that you struggle with. Take care of the bad habits before you get to that position. Don't wait until you get ordained. Don't wait until you get to be the pastor of a church, to be the minister, to start working on these things. No, work on these things before, so that when you get that role, when you walk into that role, you walk into that calling, you can be blameless. Meaning that when people look at you, now we understand, especially in this day and age, that people are going to try to find something that they can throw at you. People are going to find a reason to hate you, especially as a Christian. Okay? We understand that. It's part of the job. It's part of the role. It's part of the life. Okay? As being a Christian, people are going to find something to hate you for. We understand that. But don't give them ammo. Don't give them ammo. Do not give them ammo. Don't give them a reason to discredit you. Don't give them a reason to call you hypocritical. Okay? If you're up on the pulpit preaching Sunday after Sunday after Sunday about fornication, but you're sleeping with women in the church, you know what you are doing, you're sinning, first of all. Second of all, you're giving the people a reason to talk about you. I heard one sermon from this pastor, and he was talking about, why isn't there more grace available, for the pastors? There should be, Christians, if you're in the pews or if you're on the pulpit, the same grace is available. Yes, that's true, but you have to understand that the responsibility is heavier for you. You're the leader. You're the leader. So if you mess up, other people will mess up too because they leaning on you because you're the leader. You're the leader. So be blameless. The next thing it says, the husband of one wife. The husband of one wife. Now, people, I've read other translations of this, and sometimes they just say, you know, the husband of his wife, the husband of a wife, you know, to kind of open the door to polygamy. Not acceptable. Not acceptable. It clearly says it right here. The husband of one wife. Not 2, not 3, not 5, not 7, not 700. One. One wife. Meaning that you must be faithful to that one wife. Why do we have such a problem with this in the church these days? So many of these pastors having a hard time being faithful. Having a hard time being faithful to one wife. Now, that does not mean that you have to be married in order to be an overseer in the church. You don't have to. You don't have to be married, okay? I know plenty of single pastors, single ministers. It's okay if you're single. You don't have to be married. And this also doesn't mean that, you know, if you separate for biblical reasons, if your divorce is under the biblical realm, meaning infidelity, and if your spouse dies, you can still be remarry and be fine. Okay? But you should be faithful to your wife. Why? I don't know why you would ask why, but some people do. Why is it such a problem with people not being faithful? Because you are an example. And if the example is continually cheating on his wife, what do you think the sheep are going to do? If the shepherd is cheating on his wife, what do you think the sheep are going to do? If you think infidelity is okay, they're going to think infidelity is okay. So, be faithful and a husband of one wife. Not 2, not a wife and a side piece. Okay? One wife. One. Next part. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, meaning temperate, meaning that you have good temperament, that you're not overreacting all the time, that you're not overly emotional and easily influenced, that you have self-control. Self-control. You need to have self-control if you're going to be a pastor, if you're going to be a minister, if you're going to have a leadership role in the church. You have to have self-control. You have to have good temperament. Because let me tell you something, people going to try you. They're going to test you. They're going to try to see if you still got a bit of that sinful lifestyle in you. And you have to be able to not overreact, to not be overly emotional. Because the devil will use that. The devil will use that. The devil will send somebody who know how to push your buttons to get you out of character. And if you get out of character, it's going to hinder. It's going to hinder you. It's going to hinder your testimony. It's going to hinder your teaching. Is it fair? We're not here to talk about what's fair and what's not. I'm here to give you what the word says. Is it fair? Probably not. But this is what you get when you're a Christian. This is what you get when you're a pastor. This is what you get when you're a minister. Your responsibility is heavier. Okay? When I was a kid, my mother told me something. She told all of us something. If they didn't do what they were supposed to do, I was the one that got in trouble. Why am I getting in trouble? My little brother's the one that messed up. Because I told you. I gave you the responsibility. I gave you the authority. So the fact that you didn't exercise the authority that I gave you is the reason why you're in trouble. Same thing happened to Adam. Okay? Adam tried the same thing. It's this woman that you gave me, okay? She influenced me. She did her woman woo thing. She made me eat that fruit. Now she got a punishment, but the problem was with Adam. Because God said, I told you. What did I tell you? So yes, as a minister, God's going to tell you things. He expects more from you. Understand what you're asking for, people. You want to be a prophet? You want to be an apostle? You want to be a pastor? You want to be a preacher? You want to be a teacher? Understand what you're asking for. Understand what you're asking for. So, blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, and sober-minded. Sober-minded. Okay? Able to have clear thinking and handle situations in a proper way. Use wisdom. Use wisdom. Again, this ties in with having the temperament, not being easily influenced by what other people say and what other people do. Okay, you have to be sober-minded and have good temperament. The next thing, of good behavior. Okay, be a servant. Be willing. Be a servant and act right. Live holy. Very simple. Very simple. Of good behavior. Act right. Do what you're supposed to do. Live holy. The next part. It says, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality. Be hospitable. Be a servant. Willing to open their home to both friends and strangers. Okay? You can't use the excuse that you're not a people person if you want to be a minister. You can't use the excuse that you're not a people person and that you don't like people if you want to be a prophet or a pastor. You want to have a leadership role in church. You can't say that I'm not a people person, because that's all that you're going to deal with is people. That's what being a preacher is. That's what being a minister is. So you got to be hospitable. Be able to open your home. That's what it's talking about. Being able to open your home to both friends and strangers. Now, be led in this. I'm not telling you that you got to open your home to everybody that asks. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying you got to open your home to some random person off the street. Be led in it, obviously. Be led in what you do. But what is more talking about is being able to open yourself up to people. Now, understand what that means. That means at some point you are going to get hurt. You are going to get hurt. Listen, if you're going to be a pastor, if you're going to be a prophet, if you're going to be a pastor, your congregation is going to hurt you. You want to be a prophet, you're going to prophesy to somebody and they're not going to do a lick of what you said. A lick of what God told them to do. They're going to hurt you. It's going to happen. But your strength lies with God. Your peace lies with God. But it's a part of being a leader. At some point, they will hurt you. They will hurt you. So, of good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach. In other words, you should be able to teach. You should know the word. Be able to teach in a private setting. You know, the one-on-one with people. You should be able to teach the word in that. You should be able to teach the word in a public setting as well. So that's not just on the pulpit. That's when you're at the gym talking to a stranger. That's whether you're over a crowd of 1,000 or a crowd of 2. You should be able to teach the word. You should be able to teach the word. You should know the word. Study the word. The Bible tells us to study to show ourselves approved. So you need to be able to teach if you want to be a minister or an overseer in the word. In the ministry. Next part. Not given to wine. Not given to wine. Not addicted to drinking. Not a drunkard. It does not prohibit alcoholic beverages, but it does discourage against it. Now, I want you to notice this. Notice this here. Okay? In the... Where's it at? Oh, yes. So it says in verse 2, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, of good behavior, given to hospitality. Meaning that you should be open to being hospitable. Yes. Then it says, apt to teach, not given to wine. Meaning that you should not be open to wine. Now, I know some people have a hard time with this concept. They think, as a Christian, it's okay if I have a drink, if I have a glass of wine, if I do this, if I do that, it's fine because the Bible doesn't necessarily condemn drinking, and Jesus turned water into wine and they drank wine in the Bible days and this, that, and the other. Just don't do it. Just stay away from it. Why? Why do you want to drink? Why? Give me a reason. Why? Because it tastes good? because it tastes good. Let me tell you something. You want to use the Jesus drank wine in the Bible days thing? Fine. Yes, he did. He turned water into wine. But you have to also understand that wine was nowhere near as alcoholic as a lot of the drinks are today. Okay? Y'all drinking liquor. Jesus wasn't drinking liquor. Okay? He wasn't drinking no liquor. Now, I personally don't think that you should drink it all. I just don't think it's a good example, especially if you're a minister of the gospel. Somebody told me a story about this one young man who is a minister, who is a preacher, and he was at a bar kind of karaoke thing to support his friend who was doing music, and he was in there drinking. Now, some people will say, well, it's okay if you had a drink. It's not a good look. If I'm at a bar and I see you have a drink at the bar, but then I go to church the next day and I see you on the pulpit, I'm going to have a problem. Wait a second. You was just at the bar drinking. Wait a second. We was at dinner the other night and you had a full glass of wine. You had some liquor. Now you're going to try to tell me that the things that I'm doing is wrong? No. So it's not a good example to drink. So if you want to be a minister, I would encourage you, don't drink at all. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't drink it. The next part. Not given to wine, no striker, meaning obviously don't be violent. If you want to be a minister, you should not be violent. You should not be ready to throw hands at the drop of a pen. Okay? Keep yourself contained. Again, that goes back to temperament. Don't let people get you out of character. You have to have good self-control. You have to have good temperament, and don't be violent. You should not be fighting. The next part. Not greedy of filthy lucre. In other words, not greedy of money. Not being greedy with money. Okay, don't pastor in search of money. Don't preach in search of money. Don't prophesy in search of money. That doesn't mean that money can't be made in doing these things. That doesn't mean that ministers can't be paid. That doesn't mean that as a pastor you can't be paid, or as a prophet you can't be paid. Okay, that's understandable. The Bible tells us that the gift will make room for you, and it's okay if a minister gets paid. That's fine. Nothing against that. I'm not against that. If a minister writes a book and the book sells well and they get money from the book, that's fine. Okay? But do not be greedy about it. Your whole focus should not be, how can I get more money? Your focus should be, how can I win more souls? You see, a lot of pastors today, they care more about getting people in the seats so that they can give offering and pay tithes than winning souls. They care more about their members and them attending because they want that money, because they want that offering, they want those tithes, than they care about winning souls, than they care about changing lives. I've been to some big churches, some big, mega churches, some large ministries. And I sit there a lot of times and I think, okay, how are these people being fed? How are they growing? Who's teaching them? Who's helping them to grow? You should be able to grow in your ministry. And as a teacher or a minister or an overseer, you should be focused on souls. Winning souls, helping people be better Christians, helping people to be better walkers, people who will walk this walk. That's what you need. That's what you should be focused on. But some people just want to get people saved so that they'll come to the church, so that they pay tithes. They don't even care about their lives being changed. They don't care. They just want to be able to say that, yeah, we won 300 souls today. But 290 of those souls are going to fall back in sin next week. What good has that done? You need to be able to teach these people. You need to be able to help these people to grow, to love these people. So don't be greedy. Don't be a lover of money. Be a lover of God. Okay? But patient and not a brawler. You should be gentle and not argumentative and not covetous. Okay? It says not greedy or filthy of lucre, but patient, not a brawler, not covetous. So you should be patient and kind. You should not be argumentative. and feel that you or all you are or always have to be right. Listen, as a minister of the gospel, okay, the final word is the word. You got to understand, as a minister of the gospel, you are not God. You are not God. You are not God. As a pastor, you got to understand that you are not God. That those people in those pews are not your people. They're his people. Sometimes pastors, they get caught up in pride, right? They get caught up in pride and thinking that, that they have to be over every single area of their congregation's lives. You can't make a decision without talking to me first. You want to buy a house, you should talk to me first. You want to get married and do all these other things, you should talk to me first. If you're going to get married, you actually should talk to your pastor. That's actually a good thing. But you want to make a decision in life, you should talk to me first. And that's not how it should be. Okay? You got to understand that as a pastor, as a minister, as an overseer, you are not God. You are not God. You encourage, you help, you assist, you are a leader, but you are not God. So don't feel like you always have to be right, that you are always right. You should have a good counsel around you. You should have a good counsel around you. Surround yourself around the right people. And don't be argumentative. You should not, at every instance feel like you have to argue. You should not at every instance feel like you have to get your point across and you have to say how you feel, because it's not about how you feel. It's about what the word says. It's about what God wants. You have to be able to put your feelings aside and not be covetous. Learn to be... People who are covetous are never satisfied. Nothing that you do will ever be good enough, because they're going to always want more. That's not to say that you can't have a vision. That's not to say that you can't want more things spiritually. That's not to say that you can't want more things from God. But you should not be comparing yourself to another ministry and saying, dang, I want us to be like that ministry. I'm coveting what they're doing. No. Do what God has told you to do. So, 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 4, one that ruleth well his own house, having his children in subjection with all gravity. For if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? If you can't manage your own house, how can you manage a ministry? Your family is your first ministry. Your family is your first ministry. Listen, ministry is work. Ministry is important. Ministry should be at the top of your list. But it should not be number one. It should go God, family, ministry. God, family, ministry. If you focus on God, you will do good in your family. If you focus on God and do good in your family and take care of your family, you will be able to do good and take care of the ministry. So, as a minister of the gospel, as an overseer, as a leader, as a pastor, as a prophet, as an evangelist, whatever you want to be, whatever leadership role you want, as a leader, your house should not be in disarray. Your house should not be in disarray. You need to learn to get your house in order. You should not be cheating on your wife. Your children should not be all over the place doing whatever they want to do. Now, understand that people have free will, okay? We know that sometimes children, especially in ministry, especially preachers' kids, they tend to rebel. They tend to rebel, and we know that happens. But are your children rebellious because of your actions or in spite of your actions? Are you the reason that your children are rebellious? The Bible tells us to provoke not your children. Learn to balance your family. Learn to get your family in order. Again, I understand that sometimes preachers' kids can be rebellious. But are they rebellious because of you, or in spite of you? Have you done what you needed to do as a father? Have you done what you needed to do as a husband? Or was your whole focus on the ministry? Did your wife need you at some point, but you said, no, I have to go down the street and pray for so-and-so? Did your kids need you at some point, but you said, no, I got to go do something at the church. I got to be at this engagement. I got to preach at that church. I got to be here. But your kids need you at home. But your wife needs you at home. There's nothing wrong with saying to a ministry, with saying to a congregation, with saying to a church, hey, I'm going to take some time and be with my family. That is okay. Now, that doesn't mean that, God's not going to sometimes take you through things. That doesn't mean that, sometimes, that sacrifices won't be made. Because they will. They have to be. But your family is important. And if you don't know how to run your house, you can't run a ministry. You can't. Not effectively. Not effectively. You can't. You can't. You cannot. Kids, kids grow up and they make their own decisions at some point. And at that point, it's out of your hands. But make sure you do everything you need to do as a father. Make sure that you do everything that you need to do as a husband. As a wife. As a mother. Make sure that you do everything you need to do for your family. Verse 6, not a novice, lest being filled up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. In other words, new converts, baby Christians, if you just got saved, you should not be seeking a ministerial role. If you just got saved, like recently just got saved, you should not be trying to be a pastor right off the bat. You should not be trying to be a preacher right off the bat. You should not be trying to be a prophet. There's nothing wrong with desiring those things, but you should not feel entitled to those positions just because you got saved. Just because you got saved. New converts should not be put into leadership. Many ministers were elevated before their time and they become prideful. This is a problem. A lot of people in some churches, they get saved and they think that because they got saved and they've already been in church for X amount of years, but this is the time that they decided to give their life to Christ, that they should be moved up to a minister role or a deacon role or a pastor role. No. If you just got saved, if you recently just gave your heart to Christ, you should not be trying so desperately to get into a preacher's role, into a pastoral role, into a minister role. Okay, we're in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and we were at verse 6. Okay, you should not. You should not. You should not. That's a problem, man. Sometimes people get elevated too quick. They get put into these positions too quickly. They get ordained after only being saved for a year. Now, if God is leading you in that direction, if God is telling you himself that he wants you to pursue that, then, you do what God tells you to do. But it's too many people getting elevated too fast. Too many people who never learn to serve, who never learn to be humble. Serving is so important because if you can't serve in the church without a title, you're not going to be able to serve with a title. If you have a hard time serving in the pulpit, if you have a hard time serving in the pew, you're going to have a hard time serving in the pulpit. Because that's what a pastor is. That's what a minister is. That's what a prophet is. That's all that they do. They serve. They serve, they serve, they serve. And too many people are getting elevated entirely too quickly. So if you recently got saved, if you're a novice, you should not be put into an overseer role. Verse 7. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 7. Moreover, he must have a good report with them that are without, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Likewise, must the deacons be grave. So, it said you must have a good report. In other words, people should speak well of you. Again, we understand that people are going to find some reason to not like you. They're going to find some reason to hate you. They're going to find something to talk about. But the majority of people, both saved and not saved, should have a good report about you. I should not be hearing from both saved and unsaved people that you're a dog, that you're lustful, that you're a flirt, that you lie all the time, that you speak gossip all the time. there should be a good report. When people ask about you, both whether they're saved or not, it should be around the same thing. Yeah, he's a good man. Yeah, he loves his family. He's faithful to his wife. Yeah, I don't know everything about church, but I know he's a good church boy. He's a man of God. I should be hearing man of God from both sides. Because even people who aren't saved know what a man of God looks like. Even people who aren't saved. Because a man of God cannot be ignored. A true man of God cannot be ignored. Same thing with a true woman of God. A true woman of God, a true man of God cannot be ignored. So, you should have a good report. Then it goes on to talk about deacons. Now, you got to understand that a lot of the requirements for the deacons are really just servants, assistants, okay? That kind of thing. They do preach, they do teach, but they more so serve both the congregation and the pastor. Don't think of, don't think of that. Don't look at that word deacon and think that you running things. You're a servant. Nothing wrong with being a servant. Being a servant is great. Being a servant is great. But you serve the congregation and you serve the pastor. And it says more, where's it at? Where are we at? Verse 8. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 8. Likewise must the deacons be grave, not double-tongued, not given to much wine, not greedy of filthy lucre, holding the mystery of faith in pure conscience. So, grave, reverent, that just means respectful. As a deacon, you should be respectful. Respectful of God and respectful of man. Not double-tongued, meaning that you shouldn't be a gossiper, okay? And you should be honest. People should not be saying that you lie. The people should not be saying, yeah, you can't really trust that person, and you be a deacon. Shouldn't be happening. And you should not be manipulative. You should not be manipulative, because occasionally some deacons can try to be manipulative to the congregation to get them to turn on the pastor, or in turn they'll be manipulative because they really want that pastoral role. So, as a deacon, you should be respectful of God and man. You should not be a gossiper. You should be honest. You should be truthful. And you should not be manipulative. Then it says a mystery of faith, meaning that you should continually be seeking to follow the word. Seeking after the word in pure conscience. Meaning that when you're seeking the word, that every time that you read the word, that you should not be feeling conviction every single time. Now, that doesn't mean the word's not going to convict you, because it is. Because it is. But you should not be feeling bad that you don't read enough. Because you should be reading enough. You should not be feeling bad that you don't pray enough as an overseer. Because you should be praying enough. Okay, you should not have that conviction that you're not doing enough, that you're not seeking hard enough. Because you should be seeking hard enough. Because you're a minister, because you're a deacon, because you're a prophet, because you're a pastor. Verse 9, holding the mystery of the faith and pure conscience, and let these also first be proved. Meaning, you should be seen before you are appointed. You should be seen before you are appointed. Your life should reflect the office before you enter it. Let your life be proof of your calling. You should not always have to explain to people what your calling is. Let your life be the proof of your calling. Let your life show me that you're called to be a pastor. Let your life show me that you're called to be a prophet. Let your life show me that you're called to be a preacher or a teacher or an evangelist. Let your life show me. Let your life show me. You should be seen before you are appointed. You should be seen before you are ordained. So that when you get ordained, people will say, oh, you've already been doing that. You've already been doing that. You should not start doing these things when you get ordained. You should be doing these things before you get ordained. Before you get ordained. Before you get that title. Before you become that prophet, that pastor, that minister, that preacher. Before you become that. You should already be doing these things. You should already be doing these things. So, it's saying that he should prove himself. You should prove yourself with your life, with your walk. Again, you should be seen before you are appointed. Then it says, still at verse 10, and let these also first be proved, then let them use the office of a deacon, being found blameless. We went over blameless. We know what blameless means. Verse 11, even so must their wives be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. Verse 12, let the deacons be the husband of one wife, ruling their children and their own houses well, for they have used the office of a deacon well, purchased to themselves a good degree and great boldness in the faith which is in Christ Jesus. Let's go back to that wives part. It says, verse 11, even so must their wives be grave, not slanderers, sober, faithful in all things. So, I think this is a great example of the kind of woman that you should be looking for if you're going to be a minister of the gospel. If you know that you're called to be a prophet, you know that you're called to be a pastor, you know that you're called to walk as an overseer role in the church, this is the kind of woman that you should be looking for. Choose a proper wife. You want to be an overseer, you want to be a leader, choose a proper wife. Choose a proper spouse. Choose someone who lives as you live. Choose someone who values what you value. Okay? That's what it's saying. It lines up the same things that the deacon is doing. Some of the same things the deacon is doing is the same things that the wife should be doing. She should be grave. It said the deacon should be grave. She should not be a slanderer. The deacon should be slanderous. She should be sober. The deacon should be sober. Faithful in all things. The deacon should be faithful in all things. Okay? Choose a proper wife. There's nothing that can ruin a ministry more. There's nothing that can ruin a calling more than marrying the wrong person. And don't be so hung on getting married that you choose the wrong one. Learn patience. Learn patience. If you read through this entire passage again, you see that all these things don't say nothing about how you preach. It doesn't say anything about the type of suit you should wear. It doesn't say anything about, if you can tune up, it doesn't say anything about the type of messages that you should be or any of that. It's talking about your character. It's talking about who you are at your core. That's what's important. That's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to be saying. We should not. It don't even say nothing about being gifted. It doesn't say anything about being called. It doesn't say anything about having talent. No, this is all about character. This is all about character. You called, good. So what? So what? You got talent? Great. Who cares? You got some gifts? Cool. So do 1 million other people. But what's your character like? What's your character like? Are you blameless? Are you the husband of one wife? Are you vigilant? Are you sober? Do you have good behavior? Are you hospitable? Are you apt to teach? Are you a drunkard? Are you violent? Are you greedy? Are you gentle? Are you argumentative? Are you covetous? Are you new? Do you have your house in order? These are character traits. These are character traits. Doesn't say anything about gifts. Doesn't say anything about talent. Doesn't say anything about you feeling that you're called. Doesn't say anything about, I've been serving in this church for this amount of years. Doesn't say anything about money. Or doesn't say anything about you making money. Doesn't say anything about, that you should have this amount of people in your church. No, it's about having the character. It's about taking the characteristics of God, taking on the characteristics of Jesus. And if we focused on these requirements more, and when we elevate people, when we ordain people, if we looked at these requirements and we looked down these things and said, and asked ourselves, does this pastor match up with these things that are in the word? We would have less people who become pastors, who become ministers, who just end up living their life as a sinner. Who then in turn people who actually do want to live saved into sinners because they see the person who's on the pulpit telling me how to live saved, doing the same sins that I do. How can I learn? How can you teach me if you haven't learned to get over the same things that I struggle with? How can you tell me how to not be how to be a faithful man to my wife when you're not a faithful man to your wife? How can you tell me about not being a manipulative when you're manipulative? How? This is why we need to make sure that we study the word. So, you go to your church, you read this passage. This is 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 13. You look at your pastor, you look at the ministers, you look at the deacons, you look at all the people who got a leadership role, and you ask yourself, are they following this criteria? Do they line up with this thing that's in the word? Do they have these types of characteristics? Do they have these type of characteristics? Again, that's not to say that you can't make mistakes. You can make mistakes. That's understandable. But it should not be continued behavior. You make a mistake as a pastor, that's understandable. Grace is available to you. But don't you dare sit there and complain and say that people should forgive you. No, you're the pastor. You're the pastor. Your responsibility is bigger. You're the pastor. Don't talk to me about people having grace and people in your congregation forgiving you. You're the pastor. You were the one that was teaching me about being faithful to my wife. You're the one who tripped up. And now because you tripped up, now you got these other people thinking, well, the pastor out there sleeping around, I guess I can do the same thing. Well, the pastor is gay, so being a gay is okay. The pastor be lying, so you know what? Being lying is okay. I saw the pastor at the bar the other day. He had a couple drinks. You know what? I'm going to have a couple drinks too. Who cares? You're an example. You're an example. You should be walking in holiness. Why have we gotten so far away from holiness? What is this about wanting to feel good that I should be able to express myself? You should not be able to express yourself. That's what crucifying your flesh is about. If I was able to express everything that I felt all the time, I wouldn't be a Christian. Sometimes I want to go sleep with a random woman. But if I express that, then it becomes sin. Sometimes, people do make me mad sometimes, and I do want to curse. But you know what? I don't curse because I'm not going to express myself in that way. Because I'm a Christian, because I'm saved, because I'm trying to be like Jesus. And you got these people who say they want to be like Jesus, but they acting like Judas. They say they want to be like Jesus, but they acting like Judas. So no, I understand that there's forgiveness available. Okay. I have grace for people who make mistakes. I don't have grace for pastors who continually do the same thing over and over, continually do the same sins over and over. You know why? Because there are souls looking at you. There's blood on your hands now. So understand what you're asking for when you say, I want to be a prophet. Understand what you're asking for when you say, yeah, I want a pastor. Oh, no, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a preacher. I want to be an apostle. I want to go minister the gospel all around. Understand that the burden that comes with that. Understand the responsibility. The responsibility that comes with that. It's a lot. And this is part of the reason why I know what the Lord has told me to do. I know what the Lord has called me to do. And I've been so hesitant about it because I know what comes with it. I know what comes with it. I know what comes with it. Yeah, people going to look at you differently. Yeah, people going to judge you harshly. You know what's crazy? The scripture judge not gets quoted more than John 3:16 does. People say judge not more than they say John 3:16. So that should tell you how people really feel. Let me do what I want to do. I don't want to change my life. Let me live how I want to live. Don't say anything about my sin. Don't say anything about my sin. And more importantly, the Bible talks about judging righteously. And a lot of times A lot of people aren't judging you, aren't saying that you're a terrible person or that you're evil or that you're going straight to hell right now. No, they're trying to help you. They're doing it in love. What is love if I never tell you the truth? What is love if I never tell you the truth? My mom loves me. My mother loves me. My mother whooped me. My father loves me. My father whooped me. My parents yelled at me. My parents got me together. My parents told me about myself. My parents grounded me. My parents did all these things. My parents disciplined me. My parents told me the truth about myself. Because they love me. God does the same thing. So do not sit there and think that if you become a pastor that it's going to be better for you. It's a life of sacrifice. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot. You're going to have to sacrifice time. You have to sacrifice effort. You're going to have to sacrifice sleep. You're going to have to sacrifice some engagements. You're going to have to sacrifice the things that you want. All for people who probably don't even really care about you. You're going to do it for some people who don't care. You're going to do it for somebody who isn't going to get saved. You're going to give your all, give your heart, and give your love, give your best sermons, and give your best Bible studies. And you're going to make the greatest videos and do all these things for somebody who's not going to turn their heart to God. But you know what? For that one person that does, it's going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference. Being a minister of the gospel, being an overseer, it's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful reward. But there's a burden that goes with it. There's some hardships that come with it. And if there's anyone here who feels that they're called or wants to get into that role, understand what you're asking for. I don't want to scare you away from being an elder in the church, okay? Because in the first scripture said, this is a true saying, if a man desires the office of a bishop, he desires a good work. It's good that you want to be that preacher, to be that pastor, to be that teacher, to be that prophet, to be that evangelist. It's good. That's great. I'm happy for you. I encourage you. But don't do it if you're not called. Why? Why do you say that, Gabriel? Why do you tell me not to do it unless I'm called? Because if you step into an office that you're not called for, the burden will crush you. How many pastors have you seen that quit? How many people who have leadership roles in churches that quit? That quit. Probably because they never took the time to get themselves together. Probably because that they didn't listen to God in some area. Probably because they walked into the wrong calling. They walked into the wrong calling. And a minister role in the church is not something you should take lightly. It's not something that you should take lightly. Understand that your pastor is human too, that your pastor can make mistakes. Understand that prophet can be wrong. That prophet can be wrong. The prophet can miss. Even though they have a gift from the Lord and they can get in the spirit, they're still human. They can miss. Understand that teacher does not know everything. Understand that teacher may misinterpret something in this word. Understand that. But if they have continued behavior, if that prophet misses continually, that's not somebody you should be listening to. If that pastor messes up continually, that's not a ministry that you should be in. If that teacher continuously teaches the wrong things, find another teacher. Listen, we live in a social media age and there's so many teachers. There's so many teachers. There's so many preachers. There's so many people that you can listen to and get a good word from. But if you want to be a minister, you want to be a minister of the gospel, you want to be a pastor, a prophet, an apostle, an evangelist, a teacher, a preacher, read 1 Timothy chapter 3. Read that and ask yourself, do I fall into this criteria? Do I fall into this criteria? Do I do these things? And if not, work on those things. Again, like I said before, you should already be, your life should be the proof of you being a minister. You shouldn't have to tell me that you're called to preach. I should see that you're called to preach. You shouldn't have to tell me that you're called to prophesy. I should see that you're called to prophesy, that you're called to be a prophet. You should not have to tell me these things. Let your life be your testimony. I tell people all the time, your greatest testimony is your life. Is your life. That is your greatest testimony. You can say some things. You can scream at the top of your lungs. You can preach until you're blue in the face. But your greatest testimony is your life. Because people watch you. People watching you. People are watching you. They're watching you. So, in conclusion, and I'm closing. Starting to get into my preacher mode. But in conclusion, understand what you're asking for if you want to be a minister of the gospel. And it's a beautiful thing if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're called to do. I encourage you in it. Stay strong. Stay close to God. Listen, because you can't do these things and not be close to God. Because eventually people are going to see. People are going to be able to see. Now, I don't want to talk about no specific pastors, but I've seen a lot of pastors who have no anointing, who don't know the word, who just don't have, you can tell that they're not called, that this is just something that they stumbled into, or that they thought that would be nice, that they wanted to do. Make sure that you're called. Make sure that you're called. That's really the point that I wanna drive home, is make sure that you're called. Don't rush to be no pastor, man. Don't rush to be no pastor. Don't rush to be no preacher. Take your time. Learn. Spend time with God. Spend time with God. Spend time in God. Spend time with God, man, because it's a lot, man. It's a lot. I'm just telling you, it's a lot. There's a lot of things that you're gonna have to do. Listen, I'll use myself as an example. The Lord has told me a couple things about my life, a couple things about my calling, and recently He told me that it was time for me to be ordained. Now, I was not rushing into this thing. Why? Because I know what it involves. And I told God, like, you know what, Lord, I don't want to do this. I'm not in a rush. I don't want to do that. But He said, it's time. It's time. And He asked me why I'm so afraid. And I told Him, one, because it means that it's real now. Like, you know, like the eyes are on me now. Like, the responsibility is real now. Whereas before, it's like, you know, if I make a mistake, then, you know, it's fine. If I trip up, it's cool. You know, God forgives me and nobody's watching me. I'm not accountable for anybody or any ministry. So, you know, it's cool. But when you're ordained, it's different. When you get ordained, it is different. It's different. Your anointing becomes different. Your expectations become different. And I didn't want to rush into that. I did not want to rush into that. But the Lord said what He said. He said it is time, and I'm going to be obedient. But, ladies and gentlemen, learn to wait. Be patient. Be patient. And listen, if you're in a church where your pastor and your leaders don't do these things, their character doesn't line up with 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 13, I would encourage you to pray, seek the Lord about it, and you might need to find another church. Because having one person in leadership that's like that, okay, But having multiple people who don't line up with that, that's a problem. And I think that you should seek God about another church that you should go to. I understand that sometimes it's hard to find a church, especially if it's a church that, you know, that you grew up in or that you got saved in. It's really hard to leave that kind of congregation. It's really hard to leave that ministry because it's home. It feels like home. And you don't want to really go somewhere else. You don't really see yourself somewhere else. But God will lead you to another church. God will lead you. He'll lead you to a church. If you don't feel like you're being fed in your church, if you feel like it's the same thing over and over, seek the Lord. Seek the Lord about it. You know, again, like I said, there's plenty of people that you can listen to. There's a preacher for everybody at some point. You know, if you like more of the hooting and the hollering and all that, they got preachers that do that. If you're more of the laid back, just teach me the word kind of thing, they got preachers for that. If you want, but make sure they're preaching the full word of God. Don't just find people that preach what you like. Find people that preach what you don't like. Don't just find people that make you feel good. Find people that convict you as well. So, yeah. That's all I got. That's the whole message right there. And, yeah, if y'all got any questions or anything, you can go ahead and ask them in the comments. But, yeah, that's pretty much it. If anybody ever wants to support, if anyone ever wants to be a blessing, the Cash App and Venmo is in my bio. I am a Christian rapper. And I have an album coming out December 31st. So you guys can look out for that. What else? Oh, I post these on YouTube if you ever want to rewatch it or share it. And I do these Bible studies every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless something happens or I have an engagement. But yeah, I do these every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So maybe, you know, you missed church one week. Maybe you missed church and you really want to get a good word in. You really want to get a good word of God in you. You can tune in here on TikTok. You're already going to be on TikTok anyway. I know that you are. And you can tune in and get a great word every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. And what state am I in? I am in Michigan. Oh, yeah, seeing as how I do preach. If you ever want to have me like at your church or something like that, I do travel. I actually do a lot of traveling. I'm in talks to go to where's that place? What is that place? Calgary, Canada. To an Indian reservation. We've been talking about going to Mexico. So if you ever want to support that, again, the link is in my bio. Yeah, that's